Kevin Durant, a front runner for MVP. In my opinion, the best one-on-one player in the game, perhaps ever.
Durant, the hezzy, the lay-in goes down.
That was filthy. It was absolutely filthy.
Can he get 50? Yes, he can! 51!
And Kevin Durant is one bad, bad man.
Were you aware of how close you were to 50?
Of course. So the Kings and the Raptors will tip it off.
Look at this, getting it right.
Oh, man. Draw that one up, cut it on the clips, and put it in the film room. Halliburton drives. Scotty says no.
And this kid is off the charts, isn't he?
Man, he is doing it all into the lane, lays it up and in. Oh, pretty move by Pascal. The bump, the bucket. Toronto takes down Sacramento.
Outstanding effort in every aspect for the Toronto Raptors.
Big Raptor game. Also, Kevin Durant went off on Sunday. Talking about a big game. Raptors had a complete performance last night as they beat the Knicks. Durant, 51 points against the Pistons, but questionable tonight with ankle soreness. He might have to play because the Nets had 5 in COVID protocols, including James Harden, who is now 6, who is just put into protocol. See the game if it happens on Sportsnet. East Ontario 1, starting with the pregame at 7 p.m. Eastern. Blake Murphy is in studio. Did you record something for that pregame that might no longer work?
Yeah, we'll see if they have. So I recorded 2. So they get me, because they played last night, they had me record 2 just in case.
Right.
And one was about, the Raptors are good at limiting superstars, but what about when you have 2 in Kevin Durant and James Harden? It did not cover the possibility that you have 0.
So is this like now, we're in this spot, and listen, this was breaking. Woj bomb 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, the Nets put out a tweet and a status update like right as I was walking in the room.
So like 6:29 Eastern, 4 minutes ago, 3 minutes ago. But we'll have to see, one, if they play this game, or if they just have to dress Kevin Durant with ankle soreness and not play him as the 8th man.
Right, because you have to have 8 to play. So that's kind of the rule there. And if Durant can't go, you're looking at, I don't know, Nick Claxton getting that trade value up. Like there's not a lot here. They're missing James Johnson, DeAndre Bembry, Paul Millsap, Bruce Brown. They're missing pretty much everyone that you would hope could step in with one of Durant or Harden out. Joe Harris is out too. So I don't really know what to expect for this one. We asked Nick Nurse about a pregame about, hey, you've been in these situations before where your team is like this, but how do you prepare for the opponent not knowing who they're going to trot out there and what that's going to look like? And he basically said, you got to be ready for all of it.
Damn it.
Is the game canceled? Is that what you're looking at?
No, I went to my betting app and it's off the board.
Okay.
Yeah, Jesse wants to jump in here.
Okay, I'm not a doctor or a scientist in any way, but if the Nets seemingly are dropping like flies here, and then they go and play a game where they're breathing on each other, they're playing with one ball, there's sweat everywhere, like doesn't that suggest that it might spread during the game?
Are you suggesting that 2 players who 1 hour before the game had to be removed from the lineup due to protocols may have had contact with their teammates who will now have contact with the Raptors?
That's exactly what I mean.
I don't know. That's some bold thinking there.
Right.
But like we went through this last year
some sort
too.
of doctor over there? Hey, smart guy.
We went through this last year too, and it was, trying to figure out, the Raptors had 5 or 6 players in COVID protocols and half their coaching staff out, and trying to figure out whether they were going to play night to night heading into the All-Star break was just anyone's guess. So the league has more or less set the precedent so far since they returned that if you have enough bodies to go, the game will be played. It's only when you get in a situation like the Bulls where you're down to 6 or 7 guys that they'll postpone.
Right, and it looks as though you don't need Adrian Wojnarowski because we just suggested it, but Kevin Durant is playing tonight for Brooklyn, which gives them magically 8 players versus Toronto. We'll see how much he actually plays.
Read your mind.
Yeah, we'll see how some of those G Leaguers do. They got David Duke Jr., Kessler Edwards.
This is right up Blake Murphy's alley.
If you were a big draft head, the Kessler Edwards against Malachi Flynn and Yuta Watanabe game, this is perfect.
Let's talk a little bit about Yuta Watanabe and the Raptors' performance last night to me was, and maybe it was just De'Aaron Fox's post game sitting in the back of my mind, but Jesse and I had talked about this. I firmly believe with execution, hard work, smart coaching, smart players, you win 30 games in the NBA. And that's a starting point. And the Raptors last night, I thought that was the personification of having good coaching and putting players in the position to succeed.
Yeah, and I think, you see kind of how that builds, right? And the confidence in that group. And I think a big part of that is that when that second unit is at its best, it's playing to an identity, right? It's forcing a lot of turnovers. It's Delano Banton leading the break in transition. It's, Chris Boucher's been starting of late, but normally he's a part of that group, and it's him rim running or filling lanes and getting stuff around the rim. It's Yuta attacking a closeout aggressively. So I think that second unit needs to play with that identity to really feel confident and energetic. And this is kind of like ethereal and tangible stuff, but look at the games that bench has looked its best, and they've been few and far between, but it's generally the games where they're really getting out and running and everyone's touching the ball early. So I don't think it's a coincidence that last night they had a season high in bench points by a long shot. On the same night, they had a season high in assists as a team and a season high in points in the paint.
Against a team that's pretty good in the paint.
Yeah, although no Rashawn Holmes last night,
Right.
so that's my guy. I got to.
Is that your guy?
I started the whole. Every year I seem to get one guy that I really want the Raptors to get in free agency,
Right.
and then like Raptors Twitter gets in on it, and then it's like a huge disappointment. It's like, wait a second. Everyone's upset that Harry Giles didn't sign. Like, what's going on? But Rashawn Holmes is legitimately very good, and once he's been on this new deal long enough, I promise he's going to be at the top of my who should the Raptors trade for columns.
Well, as an older dude in the business now, one of the things I'm most proud of, and I don't know if I've said this to you, but I like the amount of people who cover the Toronto Raptors at this time, to me, being there kind of from jump, is something that makes me smile inside. And maybe I'm skewed by guys like you and or the Raptors show, where Alex Wong and Will Liu kind of have turned me on Yuta. And at the start of the year, in preseason, there were these flashes, right? Is there something there that might flourish here? Because it was kind of bad timing on his injury to start the year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot to like about Yuta. He's a guy that I liked back when he played 2 seasons on a two-way deal with Memphis and was down with their G League team. He was maybe the best multi-position defender in the entire G League over those 2 seasons. And it was really, it's the story for every single player in the G League. Can you develop a three-point shot? And that's, that was the question for Yuta, because there's a bare minimum to get into a rotation in the NBA, right? And it's beyond just defense unless you're Andre Roberson or something like that. So Yuta got there with the three-point shot where the Raptors were comfortable with it. And now I think you see, the confidence is growing. He takes 8 shots in a game last night, which is pretty out of character for him. And I think, too, not just the growth with the Raptors, I think the experience of playing for Japan in the offseason, where it was really him and Rui carrying, kind of co-man, carrying that offense. I think that was huge for him to see that, it's great that you can be a selfless player and you want to stay within your role, but there are times where you are talented enough and the game situation is going to call for you to go outside of that role card. And the more comfortable he gets with that, that's how he moves up from, he looks like the 10th man to, he looks like the 8th man. And then, maybe he's a guy you want to lock up for a few years this summer.
I don't want to pass over what Scottie Barnes did yesterday or what Scottie Barnes has done for the last little while. And I think there's one caveat that not enough Raptor fans have taken into consideration, but playing your one season of NCAA basketball during the pandemic makes it really, it's hard enough to make the transition from one and done in the NCAA. A 6th man on your NCAA program in a pandemic year, there are going to be highs and lows with Scottie, but I think he's found a little groove here. And I think what he's showing us is even more than it would be in a normal year.
Yeah, and you have to hope that's the case, right? And I agree with you. He's already played more minutes than he played at Florida State. They really weren't traveling a full...
Think about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, really weren't traveling a full even NCAA travel schedule last year. So this is all a lot. And then the other thing, too, is not just fatigue. It's, NBA teams have 10, 15, 20 games of tape on you. And you saw, I think the best example of that was the first Golden State meeting where Draymond Green gave him the rookie treatment the whole game. Scottie got nothing when Draymond Green was on the floor with him. And I think those are the kind of challenges that we'll be able to use to track his progress on the offensive side. And then for me, the sign that he's maybe past that mini rookie wall, if he hit one, is that the defense has really gone back to that level we saw in the first few games of the season. I was a little underwhelmed, with everyone on this team over the course of November, really. But Scotty took a dip on that end, and I think you're starting to see him and Pascal together, especially, really finding that defensive edge. And Scotty Barnes is such a talented transition player, both on the run looking for his own basket, but really creating for others as well.
Yeah.
That, he's one of those guys that it's really easy to see where defense can lead to offense and everything kind of just snowballs when things are clicking for him.
Do you have any idea what in the good name of Vincenzo Esposito is wrong with Kem Birch and or OG Anunoby?
No.
Okay, good.
No, nobody
Let's
seems
move
to
on.
know. It's top secret. They're still not practicing, or they're back to not practicing, rather. Even today, Nick Nurse got asked about Precious Achiuwa, who's, based on the protocols and the timelines, is expected out of isolation soon. But even then, he's got a mystery shoulder thing as well. They're notoriously tight-lipped with this stuff anyway, but especially so with the OG and Kem situations.
Okay, one more about the Nets before I think Jesse has an update. And Ian Begley earlier today on Twitter, works for SNY, suggesting, listen, I've been hearing some Kyrie murmurs, some rumors. Shams was writing about Kyrie. There's a lot percolating around Kyrie. Some of it that he's going to go back. Some of it that he's going to go back and wants to be traded. Where do you see this breaking down for the Nets and maybe the most interesting man in the NBA?
Yeah, we had Brian Windhorst on the Fan Morning Show this morning, and he said basically if you're trying to figure out Kyrie off the court, good luck.
Yeah.
So, I think obviously he's teasing it. There's been reporting that he's been in contact with Kevin Durant and James Harden, and obviously that's a team dynamic kind of thing. The Nets, I remember being on a roundtable with you at the start of the season when we knew Kyrie wouldn't be playing. We were all mostly like, the Nets are going to be fine as a regular season team, but it's, when they start getting thinned out that you really see the Kyrie absence and feel that. So maybe there's some urgency as we get later in the season here. Yeah. I think the big swing piece is what the New York State government is going to do, or the city government. The Nets have been pretty clear they don't want to do the just road games thing, but you might have to if you're going to trade them. And then if you're going to trade them, I don't know, the Knicks are always the team that it's like, hey, maybe they'll trade for the really high-paid guy who's having issues, but they're going to run into the same kind of quarantine and protocol issues that the Nets have. So I don't know what the market would be like for him other than dumping him on a bad team for spare parts, and I just don't think you do that to Kyrie, especially when he was part of the Durant-Harden package.
Yeah, I don't know enough about plant-based vaccines to walk down that road with you. So, Jesse, give us an update. Did you have something there?
Nets could use Kyrie tonight.
Yeah, they could
part
use.
Part of the update. Just who's available for the Nets tonight.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, my God, James.
So, Blake, a quick little rundown on each of them. Nick Claxton, we know who that is. David Duke Jr.
Yeah, interesting guy. I like that he pulled when asked about his name, he pulled the Office Space, why should I change my name? He's the one who sucks. Kessler Edwards was a guy who was pretty popular as a second round flyer among draft Twitter. Blake Griffin and KD and Patty Mills. Day'Ron Sharpe is a guy we haven't seen a lot of yet. So Claxton's the interesting one for me because there have been some rumblings that he's a potential trade chip for them if they're going to try to acquire a veteran with some of the trade exceptions that they have. He'd be the guy of interest heading into restricted free agency, and he's a really interesting big man prospect, a guy who can pass a little bit, protect the rim a little bit. So I think this is potentially a big breakout game for him. And I know you had your app up earlier. The opposing big man against the Raptors over rebounds has been a pretty safe move. So I'd take a look at where Claxton's is.
Man, what they're doing right now with no height, a bunch of injuries, tip of the cap.
They're back up the league average on defense.
Yes.
Look at them go.
And playing defense, Nick Nurse, tip of the cap, and a tip of the cap to the T-shirt. A little Sue Bird slam.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you gotta, Alex Wong has cover story, right? We gotta plug it wherever we can. So, gotta any opportunity to talk about cover story.
Wherever you find your good books, Cover Story by Alex Wong is there. Blake, thank you for doing this. I don't know anyone else who could have rolled through that roster.
That was amazing.
In Canada, love it. Blake Murphy. Time for one last break, last call. Jesse Rubinoff next. Thanks, Blake.
Glad we got the mic.